Chris. Just wanted to give you a little tour of my micro shop. It's a work in progress. This is kind of a mock-up of it, but I know I have a lot of the same issues that probably quite a few of you do as far as space restrictions, and I have to move every once in a while for my job. So when that time comes, I have to say goodbye to my shop and let some movers pack it up, and then when it shows back up, I want to be up and running as quickly as I can and get back out there and start tinkering. So I want to show you my shop, explain the project and the process that I'm going to be following over the next few weeks or months. And if you like it, go ahead and subscribe and keep up with the projects as I update storage and additions of new tools, and maybe learn something and be able to share an idea or two with me, and maybe something that I'm doing will rub off or inspire you to do something similar. So without further ado, so this is my first ever YouTube video. I've got my cell phone mounted in my handy dandy Irwin Quick Grip Steadicam holder here. It's clamped in there, so hopefully this isn't too horrible and things don't go out of focus. But anyhow, here you got a side view. You can see the table saw. I'll show you my SketchUp design also, but you can see the sander folded up into what would be where it would be used, but it's going to be a fold away tool. Ultimately this thing's going to be one giant outfeed table for my table saw. So this end of it will be the user end of the table saw. It's on its stock cart here, but I'll be making a fixture for it so that it can mount flush with the table, and I'll cut grooves in it for miter gauge slots out into the table.
The goal is to be able to break down sheets of plywood through the table saw, or cut a rabbet down the full length of a sheet of plywood. Say if we're making a cabinet and wanted to insert a cabinet back.
Over here will be a built-in router table. There's my table that I'm actually going to inlay into it, but that'll be mounted right flush with the top so that you can run a board all the way along the length of it. Here's my miter saw. It'll be set down in so that it'll also have a full support the length of a board. My drill press will be in line with where the miter saw would interfere with the outfeed of the table saw, so it actually won't cause any additional interference. My joiner is just kind of sitting here on the sawhorse that I always have it mounted on. It won't be in this position when I mount it for future. You'll be able to see that probably better on SketchUp. And then my bandsaw will be somewhere here on this opposite end. But the top of the table right now is 40 by 96. I had to cut down about 8 inches off of the width of my sheet of plywood in order to make it into 2 carts that would fit into a moving crate. So this is kind of loosely designed around what moving companies can do. I went with 40 inches wide, number 1 so it fits in the crates that they're going to use, and number 2 so that it should fit on the back of a tailgate lift for a box truck, and they should be able to lift it up there without too much hassle. The goal there is to keep as much of it contained inside of drawers and inside the carts so that I'm not disassembling everything when it's time to move. And also the goal is to have as much of my working shop set up as possible so that I can just roll it into my garage when I'm done. A few other things you'll see is I plan on putting dust collection to every single machine, and I apologize for all the shaking and everything. Like I said, I'm new to making videos. It's probably going to be poorly edited also. And the joiner is actually going to be mounted down below the level of the bench itself, but it'll have a parallel run with the table saw. So that I can basically finish a board and lay it up on the workbench and then run it through the table saw, and it's the next step. Sander, I'll design some kind of a fold away for it. I don't use the sander too much unless I'm doing something special, so I'll keep it out of the way most of the time, and then when I need to, I want it to be able to be set up within 1 minute. That's kind of a goal for all of my tools. That I come into the shop, roll it outside, so you can see I want dust collection in the whole thing, but I want to be able to roll it outside and keep some of the dust out of the garage, and then set up within 1 minute. Also in parallel run to the table saw and the chop saw, I'm going to inlay my router table right here. It's not the best router table, but I can take the fence off and it'll just be an undermounted router table right there. So I'm going to build some kind of a mount for it
I don't know what any of these things look like yet. I'm just going to design them as I go and build it in little segments. So if you're interested in what I'm doing or want to apply some of it to your shop, just go ahead and keep watching. It'll probably take me a while to get through this, but as I build it, I'll post it, and then maybe you can join me at the end and just see how it all turns out. Angle, you can see something that really stinks about having to chop off that 8 inches of width from this table. Originally I planned it so that the table saw would be right in line with the edge with the outer edge of the bench, and I'd just be able to run things through at the max width of the table saw and have it completely supported. You know, I really don't think this is going to be a major restriction because all the large rips I'm going to do are going to be on this side of the blade. One concern I do have, you can't really see it here because I don't have my bandsaw up on the bench, but in line with the table saw blade, I'm going to have to mount the kerf of the bandsaw so that if I do run something longer than 8 feet through the table saw, that kerf just ends up lining up with the bandsaw. Another goal is to, any of these machines that are going to mount to the ends of the workbench, like the bandsaw, are going to have to come off pretty quickly, or at least within a day whenever it's time to move. So I don't want to really plan on the movers too much because I'm not them, and it's their job to move me. But at the same time, I don't want to spend 2 days disassembling my shop just in preparation to move, because when it's time to move, I'll have to move pretty quickly. One other thing I wanted to show you before we put this thing away is it's all mounted on 6-inch swivel casters, and that just makes it super easy to push it over like these gaps in the concrete, or if I were to have to roll it out in my yard, it could actually do that. I got the idea from that table saw stand. Those nice big wheels just let you roll it around like a job site or wherever. Not that I'll take this to a job site, but in the event of moving or rolling it around outside the house, it can go over pretty significant bumps. Because of that failure to plan for me and ripping down those 2x4s that you see on the base frame and the top frame, I actually made this workbench height about 2 inches taller than I meant to. I tried to take into account the casters, but when I ripped that 2x4 down, the legs, I didn't cut them down to reflect, and when I built it, I glued and screwed this thing together before I realized it. But then my final workbench height ended up being about 1.5 inches higher than I wanted it. You saw it's about the same height as this table saw, but I actually thought that height was maybe a little bit too high for just comfortable work. One benefit of this, though, I will use a lot of power tools and do a lot of assembly on the top. So for me, the bench height is actually ideal for assembly. It's at a nice relaxed height for my hands, so it won't be bad come assembly. But if I were to have my son out here helping me, I'll have to give him a step stool or a bench or something to stand on, and it won't be so easy for him to learn how to use the machines when the time comes. And the other part of it is it's not exactly fun to lift a piece of 3/4 inch plywood up onto the bed of that table saw when it's so high, especially the way it is now. Nice thing is with this outfeed table, and I plan on doing some infeed support too, the goal is to be able to run plywood through the table saw on my own without killing myself or doing something unsafe, which a lot of times you have to go grab a friend to rip a sheet of plywood down, or break it down with a circular saw on the ground or across some sawhorses, which isn't bad. It's just sometimes it's nice to be able to bring a full sheet in.
That concludes the tour of my micro shop. I hope you like it. I hope maybe you've picked up on an idea. SketchUp will probably be able to show you a lot of the interferences and things better than I can. I'll make sure I throw some 360 views of the thing in there, and you can see kind of the intent of how I'm going to set everything up in the end. But basically it's just 2 carts. I'm going to bolt them together to make it one long cart with all my machines mounted to it, and hopefully you can see the way I worked out the interferences with the machines so that it allows shared axes for all the long lengths of what I expect to cut for all the machines. I'm trying not to restrict them at all, And hopefully this gives you an idea, and if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and subscribe, and you'll be able to follow me through as I set up each of these machines in their final homes and make jigs and special fixtures for each one of them. Here's a side view of the SketchUp model. You can see all the machines are placed in roughly where they'll go, just to represent where they're located and show interferences. Here's a table saw with miter grooves. You see the joiners located below the surface. Here's a sanding station that'll have dust collection for cutting or sanding over it. The grinder will be another fold-away tool. Here's the router station. It will have full support the length of the bench. The miter saw station will also have full support. The drill press, as we described earlier, and the bandsaw mounted flush with the table and the kerf in line with the table saw. This doesn't reflect the 8 inches that we cut off.